Hello, everyone. My name is Mariana, and I'm an educator at the Natural History Museum of Utah. And I'm going to lead our question and answer part of the Research Quest Live. So remember, if you have any questions, please press the Ask a Question button or leave a comment on Facebook for us. We're going to get all of your questions. And today we have some special guests. We are talking with Dr. Joseph Peterson, a paleontologist at the University of Wisconsin, and we are talking with Dr. Jonathan Warnock, a paleoclimatologist at the University of Indiana. So I want to welcome you all, and I want to say thank you so much for being here today. And how are you?
Pretty good.
Good. That's great. That's great. So I'd like to know if you like to talk a little bit more about your work, if you want to introduce yourselves, if I didn't do that quite enough.
No, sure.
Yeah.
I'll let John go first.
Sure. Yeah. Hi. My name is Jonathan Warnock. I'm a climate scientist at Indiana University of Pennsylvania. So most of my work is focused on Antarctica and the past few million years. But for the past 9 years now, I've been working with Dr. Peterson at Cleveland Lloyd to try and understand how it formed and what we can learn about what it tells us about the Jurassic. And that work mostly involves looking at the types of rocks we find and the chemical composition of those rocks and some other clues that can lead us to understanding the formation of the deposit.
And yeah, like she said, my name's Joe Peterson, and I'm an associate professor of geology at University of Wisconsin, Oshkosh. And my research focus is more in vertebrate taphonomy. So what I like to study, among other things, but is really when we come to a fossil deposit, how did everything end up the way it ended up? So it's kind of like a bit of crime scene investigation, looking at how bones are laid out, how they're damaged. Is there evidence that they may have tumbled downstream or laid out on the surface millions of years ago before they were buried? And so this is where Dr. Warnock and I come together on this project, is to really look at, the large scale taphonomy, or the events that happened from death to discovery of this organism, and the very, very tiny aspects, the chemical aspects, which is where Dr. Warnock contributes to. So we're really looking at the biggest and the smallest at this really big dinosaur quarry.
Awesome. That's really, really cool. Could you explain to us a little bit more about like the taphonomy part?
Taphonomy, yeah. So taphonomy is the study of fossil preservation. So as a paleontologist, you might study anatomy, you might study paleobiology, which is really trying to understand how these organisms functioned, and that's really important stuff. But we look at the taphonomy. So how did the bone become fossilized? How did this carcass or skeleton get to where it is? Why isn't the skeleton all perfect and complete? Why are we missing parts? Why does this bone have a bite mark in it? All of those things are part of the taphonomic reconstruction.
That's awesome. Thank you. And I think everybody who's watching, like they have been like doing the Cleveland Lloyd quarry investigation here with us. So they're also wondering a lot about Cleveland Lloyd and like how it works, what happened there. And I know that you two have been working there for some time now. So like what can you tell us about how this work goes, like how this investigation is working? And I think everybody wants to know also like how do you work there? Like what tools do you need, the stats, like everything you can share with us.
So as far as actually doing the work goes, it's really fairly simple. It really hasn't changed much in almost 200 years. We need a hammer, we need a chisel, we need some buckets, we need a brush. It's really very low tech. Although that being said, we've been trying to introduce new modern technology to add to what's been going on. So we've used things like ground penetrating radar that can help us look beneath the earth without having to dig a hole, and more modern chemical techniques that we can do back home in the laboratory. But really, if you were to have showed up in the 1800s and watched us dig, it wouldn't look a whole lot from what it looks like now. I guess our tents are a little more fancy these days.
Yeah. But definitely not windproof. We do lose a couple of tents every year.
That's interesting.
Really, we're trying to build on what's been done in the past and take all these different ideas for how Cleveland Lloyd might have formed and what processes, what actions would have caused this dinosaur bed to assemble in the past. And we're sort of revisiting these ideas and adding new types of data and new ways of thinking about this deposit to see what fits and what doesn't.
That's so cool.
There have been a lot of different interpretations for how we got the bone bed that is now the Cleveland Lloyd Dinosaur Quarry. And the work that Dr. Warnock and I have been doing is not to just, we don't want to ignore an idea because we like another idea. That's not a scientific approach. So what we're trying to do is look at everything, look at all of the different hypotheses that have been formed and see how they work together. And what we're finding is that there are aspects of many of them that do actually work to explain the sequence of events that we think may have actually resulted in this deposit.
Thank you so much. And I think we can start with some questions from the students. I got a question here from Beatrix. She's from Manhattan. And I think she's working in our investigation. So she's asking, why are there so many carnivores in the Cleveland Lloyd Dinosaur Quarry? That's
only the hardest question.
Yeah, we can start really slow,
Oh, that's still kind of the tough question we're trying to really answer, right?
That's a question. That's an answer as well. Yeah.
That's the big question, is why do we have so many carnivores? And I don't think we can give you an honest answer on that one yet, because that's why we're still going out every summer. But we are leaning towards it possibly being something to do with behavior.
Okay. That's awesome.
Yeah, and it's really important because Cleveland Lloyd is so different from all the other quarries. So many predators, where other bone beds are so many prey, so many herbivores. And really want to understand why that is, if Cleveland Lloyd is really an exception to the rule, or if it's actually showing us a better picture of the Jurassic than these other locations. Awesome.
Yeah, that's great. And it's good to know that the students are asking the right questions, right? So that's great. We also heard that we were working with 3D map of the quarry, right? So can you share with us how did you do it, and how do you work with it, and how is it helping you in your investigation?
Well, we're using a technique called photogrammetry, and photogrammetry has been around for a few decades now, at least, but it's mostly been used in archaeological investigations, and we're certainly not the first ones to use it in paleontology, but it's becoming more common. But what we're trying to do with the quarry is apply this technique as we're excavating. So we always do make a normal grid map. Where we set up strings and we have a plumb bob on a string, and we make a two-dimensional map of whatever we're excavating. But then what we do is we go in and take hundreds, if not thousands, of photographs, and we have those photographs overlap each other. And then we can put those photos into a package of software that will put them together into a three-dimensional model. And what this allows us to do is see how the bones are distributed in three-dimensional space. And that has actually shown to be a really useful tool. That Dr. Warnock led a paper that was out, what was it, a year and a half ago? Where by using that technique, we were able to at least illuminate one aspect of the quarry, and that's that we don't think it's all one deposit at once. And I'll let him explain a little bit more about that.
Yeah. So we take all these pictures, and this is sort of how we've been doing it in the past couple of years. We have this robot attached to the camera that makes the camera move up and down and back and forth, and take all these pictures. And we also take a bunch by hand, just holding the camera, using it. And the idea is that what we've seen is that the bones actually do come out in little layers, that if you look at the whole quarry overall, yeah, they're all sort of jumbled together, but we actually can see there's distinct layers of bones. And so if we have bones and then a gap without bones and then more bones, that tells us that there's missing time, that there was a deposit and then a weight and then another deposit. And one way that we can be confident that that's the truth, that that's the case, is that each of these different little mini layers of bones, the bones tend to point in one direction, and then the next layer up, they tend to point in another direction. And if they were all laid down at the same time under the same flow, the same current, we'd expect they'd all be sort of pointed the same direction. So we think based on our mapping that we're really looking at multiple events here.
That's really, really cool.
So one of the things that helps us understand as well is going back to the original question of why so many allosaurs. We still don't know, but what is becoming apparent is however they all got there, they didn't all get there at once. And perhaps it's easier to explain how you got 10 allosaurs here and then 10 allosaurs there rather than, 50 allosaurs at once.
Got it. That's so cool. That's so cool. That's really cool because when we were doing an investigation, there's a lot of like questions of like what could have happened that we have like so many at the same time, like thinking that they got there like at the same moment, and now then thinking that they come in the different moments. That's so cool. Thank you so much. Before we continue, we have more questions, but I just want to remind everybody who's watching that if you have a question, please press the Ask a Question button or leave a comment on Facebook. So now we're going to go to a more like simple question. Let's not go like, why do you have like the carnivores? Let's go a little bit slow now. Allison is asking, what's your favorite dinosaur from the Cleveland Lloyd Dinosaur Quarry? Like if each one of you have a different one, that's okay.
Ooh. Johnson, that guy.
I can't point. This is very difficult. That one.
No, yeah, that's working really well. I love it. That one. Okay.
For me, I don't know. I always have a hard time answering the "What's your favorite dinosaur?" question because it always depends on whatever I'm working on at the moment. That kind of becomes my favorite. So actually, right now, my favorite dinosaur from the quarry, and I'm going to try to show this, even though I have a weird Zoom background up, is this guy. Is this going to work? I don't think this is going to work.
Almost.
This is a Apatosaurus. I can show it to you in pieces.
Okay.
Apatosaurus, which actually this is a skull from a different quarry. We know we have a Apatosaurus at Cleveland Lloyd because recently we were able to identify one of the bones that's been exposed for quite some time. Turned out to be an Apatosaurus neck vertebra, and it didn't get there by itself. So I assume there's or was more Apatosaurus there at some point or another. So it was kind of exciting, though, to say, after nearly 100 years of excavating at this quarry, we're still discovering dinosaurs there that we didn't know we had. And so even though we just have that one bone of Apatosaurus, it was enough for me to go, okay, that's currently my favorite one there. Next month, it's probably going to be Camptosaurus, but and then it'll change to something else.
I changed that. That's totally okay. That's totally okay. When we got our entomologist from the museum interviewing, she always says that like Christy Bill, she always says that like her favorite insect is always the last one that you mentioned to her. So like
yep.
So that's okay. That's totally fine. We had got a really cool question today from New York City. Henry was asking, are only dinosaurs found in the quarry?
Pretty much. Surprisingly, the quarry is the rock left behind from what used to be an ancient pond. And usually when you find rocks that used to be an ancient pond, you'll find things like fossil fish and turtles and crocodiles and that sort of thing. At Cleveland Lloyd, we really don't. And so that's part of the really big mystery is why don't we see this typical pond life? It's almost entirely dinosaurs, which is weird.
Yeah, we have enough turtle shell to fit in your palm and a couple of broken crocodile teeth. But when you find remains like that are so rare compared to the concentration of the dinosaurs, it's almost like statistically they're not even there. They could have been washed in, or maybe there was a random turtle or a random croc that passed through one day. But we don't find fish. We don't find amphibians. We don't find lizards. The only other fossils that we find there are, other than dinosaur, are charophytes and ostracods, which are essentially really tiny fossils. Ostracods are a little tiny crustacean, and charophytes are a type of algae. So we find those fossils, and that's really important. We've been actually trying to spend more time on those because that can tell us more about that ecosystem that we're seeing preserved at Cleveland Lloyd. But no, they're not nearly as exciting. Sorry to any ostracod workers out there. They're not nearly as exciting as an Allosaurus.
Okay.
They're important, but they're just not as cool.
Okay, just saying. Okay, cool. That's awesome. We got a question. Jessica via Facebook, she's asking if the quarry is open for visitors right now. I don't know.
I don't believe the quarry's open right now.
Okay, yeah, right now, no. Okay.
Yeah, and even this summer, I'm not sure how open it is going to be. It's just one of the things we just don't know yet.
But
Okay.
most summers you can come and visit and see the quarry, and if you're there during the right time period, you can talk to us and we'll show you what we're doing, and talk about what we're discovering that day or what we've been working on. So usually you can visit.
That's really cool. That's good to know. I'd like to go there. So Ryder from New York is asking, how do you get the fossils? So it's like really like how the work works. Like, how do you get the fossils?
Ooh.
Ooh,
Like that.
Yep.
like that. Okay.
So these are some of our student volunteers, student workers from our different universities, and everything in the quarry is really dusty. It's generally a very dry place, so it's kind of hard to see. But if you can see my mouse moving, some of these darker patches are bones over here by Bailey, one of our experienced volunteers. There's some more surrounded by this red tape. And so we have people in here being very careful not to step on or sit on or squish the bones. And they're working with hammers and chisels and brushes just to carefully break away chips of rock to slowly expose the bone. And then when we see a little piece of bone peeking out, we can go from there and start to expose it more and more. So this is just as we were just beginning to see part of an Allosaurus jaw. So these very, very shiny parts, again, hopefully you can see my mouse.
Yeah, we can. That's so cool.
And then this is the jaw, just as we're beginning to start to see it and expose it. And so once we see the bone, then it's just chip, 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 very, very, very carefully to get little flakes of rock away so that we do as little damage, hopefully no damage to the bone getting them out.
And we're a bit spoiled at Cleveland Lloyd because we have buildings, we have sheds over the current quarry exposure. We know that it goes back into the hillside, though, for a significant amount of space. But Cleveland Lloyd specifically is one of these rare places where you sit down and it's like you're going to find something. It's almost guaranteed. We've also been doing some work outside of the quarry, where Dr. Warnock and I have been sending students out to prospect in different areas, and we've been going on some hikes. And just last summer, we came across this. So here's kind of the early stages of what finding something looks like. So those kind of chocolate brown things you see there, those are a series of articulated vertebrae to a big long-necked sauropod dinosaur. And it's funny because we've been going to this site. You notice the red rocks behind us there. We were actually out hiking around looking at, there's dinosaur tracks in those rocks. And we've been going back to the site for 5 years?
Yeah.
Just looking for more tracks. And I think it was just about the end of the time we were there for the day. And we're like, oh, well, let's head back to camp. And we both looked down and we were standing right on this. So
cool.
And so that's the first step, is just kind of brushing things off the surface. Now, what's underneath those, or what's underneath more of that hillside, is going to be a different story. We'll have to figure that out when we get back out there again. But it starts out with kind of dumb luck. Like, you have to know you're in the right area and know what you're looking for, but you can't guarantee when you're walking around that you're going to find articulated bones. At Cleveland Lloyd, you can almost gamble that you're probably going to find something, and it's probably going to be Allosaurus, but it's a little different than when you're out walking around in the field.
Yeah, but those pictures are really cool. Thank you for sharing. They're awesome. Sure. And I got a more light question. My friend Aiden here, she was asking kids today in class what was their favorite dinosaur movie. So maybe we'd like to know, from you as well. She asked if you can share, if you have a favorite dinosaur movie.
Oh gosh. I mean, other than the obvious, I have to go with the first Jurassic Park. That's still my favorite.
Yeah,
Also my
I think it's
favorite.
the only answer.
Yeah, I think so.
Only possible answer. Okay. Okay. She says no here, but it's okay. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, we can have the discussion later. She's like, okay, that's fine. So before we continue, I just want to remind everybody who's watching that if you want to leave a question, first just press the ask a question button or leave a comment on Facebook. Related to that, we have a question. Mary from Kansas is asking, what was the biggest fossil you found at Cleveland Lloyd?
Do you have a picture? Find one.
Of the
Yeah.
the big one. I think I do. Maybe. I don't. Actually, honestly, I think those vertebrae might be the biggest thing we've been finding recently. But we did find, what was it, about 3 years ago?
Yeah.
In the quarry, we had students on one side of the quarry, and about 3 or 4 feet away was another student, and they both found something at the same time, and they were uncovering it and following, and then we found that they connected, and they found it was actually the same piece, and ended up being about a 3.5-4 foot long shoulder blade to a Camarasaurus, so another one of the more common long neck dinosaurs, one of the more common sauropods that we have in the Morrison and at Cleveland Lloyd too, specifically. But yeah, that was kind of funny. At the same time, oh, we found something over here. We found something over here, and they ended up being the same thing. It's just that big.
Yeah, they're really interesting. The teeth, like the spoon-shaped teeth. I know that like every time I show this teeth to the students, it's always like it's a spoon, and it's also.
Yeah, Camarasaurus are really weird. Their teeth are really kind of cool shaped. They don't look like what you would expect. I always call them spoon shaped too. Like you almost eat cereal with those things.
Yeah. Usually I get this from the students when they're seeing this. It's really cool. So I have a question here from our team. Like, what can students, like middle schoolers, do to get involved in paleontology? We're asking because we got a lot of like students who want to be paleontologists. We have like this week Allison from Park City who's really interested in being a paleontologist, and she's really working on our investigation. So what do you think that middle schoolers could do to get involved?
Well, this is a really good start. Things like museum visits, or if you can, coming to the actual sites to see this stuff, and just holding on to that curiosity, reading or watching movies or documentaries, and being engaged and just trying to learn about it and interact with it until you get further on into college. And then usually a lot of opportunities can open up at that point to actually do some work.
I would say even at the middle school level, though, just spending time outdoors and you may not live in an area like, for example, I'm in Wisconsin right now, and we don't have dinosaurs here. I can spend all day looking for them outside, and I'm not going to find one. But there are fossils here that are even older, and those tell an important part of our planet's history and the history of life on this planet as well. So wherever you are, find some of that natural history in your area and get a hold of the nearest museum or the nearest university or geology or biology department. Find somebody who studies this kind of stuff and reach out to them, share pictures of the fossils that you're finding. Just making those connections is really helpful, even at the middle school level, because like Dr. Warnock said, keep that imagination, that curiosity open. You'll find people that share that passion as well.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. I think we got a question that is specifically for Jonathan. Sally from Colorado is asking, what are diatoms? Did I say that right? And
yes, you did.
I'm so sorry. I always have to check. How do you use them to study ancient climates?
So I didn't prepare a picture. I should have. Diatoms are fossils. They're also still alive, but they're algae. So very similar to plants. They do photosynthesis, that sort of thing. And they're found in modern environments everywhere. So freshwater, saltwater, they're all over the place. And because they are single-celled organisms, they only have one cell, they have a really fast generation time. You get the next generation and then the next generation really quickly. And so the different species can respond pretty quickly to changes in their environment. And so the work I do is around the Antarctic. And so we know that some species prefer cold water or warm water, saltier water, fresher water, more wind, less wind, more nutrients, fewer nutrients. Yeah. Oh, thank you. And by looking at what different species occur at what time frame, you can get an idea of what environmental conditions were like, and then we can use that to track things like changes to temperature or nutrients or salinity or pollution or just a huge number of different factors through time.
So cool. Thank you. I didn't know about it as well. So I was just like, am I asking right? We got a question from Susan in Amelia Island. She's asking, how big is an Allosaurus? And I think we can try to get a picture as well here. So
Allosaurs vary in size. So most of the ones we have at Cleveland Lloyd are actually juvenile to subadult. So we're looking at, yeah, here's an Allosaurus. And this is one of the larger ones that was found at Cleveland Lloyd, and it's around 25 feet long or so. So some of the really, really big Allosaurs can be pushing around 30 feet. But most of the ones that we have from Cleveland Lloyd are actually maybe around the 10 to 12 foot, maybe a little bit bigger. So, and when you start looking at the maximum size that we have for Allosaurus, that's when you're going to see some paleontologists weighing in on, well, is that a different species or is it just a really old, big individual? And there are some there's some active discussion and work being done on trying to solve that problem as well. But on average, Allosaurids, yeah, the 20 to 30 foot range. Nothing I'd want to meet in a dark alley.
Yeah, I definitely agree about that. And I think that before we end, I have a question. Jack in New Orleans is asking, why are fossils more special than rocks? Ooh.
Because they're cool looking.
They're cool looking.
Mm.
Well, probably part of the answer is they're not. You can learn just as much from rocks.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's fair. I love rocks as well. So.
But they're going to tell you some different things. Rocks are, especially sedimentary rocks, record environments, places where sediments are deposited. So that's really preserving like the stage. The fossils are the players, right? That's the life that was on that stage in the past. And so we can see how the players have changed and how the stage has changed by looking at the combination of rocks and fossils. I think one of the tragedies, if you look at the history, especially of dinosaur paleontology, is in its earliest days, they ignored the rocks. It was just smash the rocks, get the bones out. And that's because they were trying to fill museums, and that makes sense. But we now know that, no, pay attention to the rocks around it, because that's going to tell you a lot about how that fossil was made, how that bone got there, and what was going on when that was all happening.
That's great. We just got a question. So can we answer this one just really quickly? Allison is asking, how long does it take to dig up a dinosaur? I think that maybe this question varies a lot, but
depends.
Yeah.
It depends how complete it is, how big it is, how hard the rock is, how sharp your tools are, how many people you have,
Okay.
how much funding
Weeks
you
to
have.
years, certainly.
Yeah, weeks to years.
Okay, that's really cool.
We have a colleague who came out and visited us just this past summer, or last summer, I should say. And she's been digging up the same skeleton for 15 years, and they still don't have it all out of the ground yet. The rock is really, really hard, and it's a really big animal.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, that's great. Good to know. Thank you so much. And unfortunately, our time is over. So I just want to say thank you so much, Jonathan and Joseph, for participating. That was awesome. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right.
And for everybody who's watching, thank you so much for watching. Tomorrow we have another class, so we're going to continue our investigation in Cleveland Lloyd Quarry with Aiden at 9:30 a.m. Mountain Daylight Time. So thank you so much. Bye, everybody.